Magandang gabi muli, Kuya Jail, at sa ating mga guests. Welcome to our, you know what, how many episodes you already have? 18th. 18 linggo na tayong magkakasama. At nakaka-excite ang ating usapan ngayon, Kuya Jail, no? Can the middle class be a strong political force? Pero siguro by way of introduction, allow me just to offer a caveat. Di naman na tayo gumagawa ng division. No? One of the comments that we've had on the posters shared ay, bakit ganon? Meron pa rin bang middle class? May ganyan pa rin ba tayong class sectioning? No? May ganun pa rin daw ba tayo? And, you know, this is not a divisive thing. We just really want to see what can the middle class do. Kasi ang pwersa ng middle class ay hindi basta-basta, di ba, Kuya Jail? There are 40 million who are in this category. And we want to see how we can use this number, this huge number for positive changes. Ang kasama natin ngayong gabi, Kuya Jail, ay isa sa pinaka-malapit na kaibigan ng ISAP. At sukay na natin siya dito sa ISIP-ISAK. I'm sure kilala na to ng ating mga loyal na viewers. Pero para sa mga hindi pa nakakakilala sa napaka-wonderful at napaka-smart, napaka-sharp nating guest na ito, si Ate Mangahas, Philippine History and Music History at the University of the East and Philippine History and Women's Studies sa St. Scholastica's College, Manila. At siya ay nag-serve bilang chairman of the Department of History sa St. Sco and was a member of the Board of Commissioners of the National Historical Commission, or NHCP, medyo mouthful, and the Board of National Commission on the Role of Filipino Women, which is NCRFW. At siya ang nag-head ng Cultural Center of the Philippines Women's Program. So this person is really an expert when it comes to culture, society, at history. So excited akong marinig si Ate Fe. Anything that you want to add, Kuya Jail, before we hear from our esteemed friend and guest?
That's right. Yeah, pakikinggan din natin si Ate Melba shortly, bago pumasok si Ate Fe, si Dr. Fe. I just wanted to say also na yung konsepto ng middle class, no, brothers and sisters, ay masalimuot siya. It's really a difficult concept. Akala natin naiintindihan natin, pero kaming mga social scientists ay iba-iba ang aming mga definitions. Siguro, babanggitin yan mamaya ni Dr. Fe at saka ni Doc Melba. Kung ekonomista ka, titingnan mo yung income. No? Yung income ng isang pamilya, income ng isang tao, at from there, you can come up with a definition. So halimbawa, ang middle class ay twice yung tinatawag na poverty threshold. So yung mga nasa 20,000 pataas, yun yung mga may ituturing na middle class. Individually and as a family of 5. Usually, ganun ang kanilang definition. Kami namang mga sociologists, tinitingnan na namin yung lifestyle, yung mga other indicators. Posible kasi na ang income mo ay mababa, pwedeng mas mataas ang income mo, pero yung mga lifestyle choices mo ay hindi nangangahulugan na middle class, right? Or pwedeng nagkakaroon pa ng mga transitions dahil bago ka lang na middle class or ngayon mo lang nararanasan halimbawa yung tinatawag na social mobility. So halimbawa, ang iyong magulang ay OFW, siya ay isang domestic helper sa Hong Kong, magpapadala ng pera dito sa Pilipinas, at ang gusto niya, yung kanyang anak ay mag-aral sa isang private school. So low income, low status kasi domestic helper, pero high income kasi nagtatrabaho abroad o nagpadala dito, yung lifestyle choices magiging mas middle class ang orientation. So very, very complicated at highly nuanced. Ayan. Pakinggan na natin si Ate Melba, who is going to welcome everyone, brothers and sisters, sa ating diskusyon ngayong gabi. Ate Melba.
Okay, welcome to all of you, especially those who are tuning in for the first time. For your information, ISIP-ISAK has conversations on faith and society every Thursday, 6 to 7 p.m. Philippine time. Doon sa mga nasa Amerika, of course, sa umaga ito, no? It's a bit early for some. But I hope you will join us nevertheless. And we would like to especially invite your active engagement in this conversation as we listen to one of our fellows, esteemed fellows, Professor Mangahas, who is not only a historian, but actually is a social activist. For your information, she was actually detained. So that gives her the revolutionary credentials to be able to speak not just about the usual class analysis that we get from Marxism. Kami pong mga, those of us who grew up in the 60s and 70s, we were raised in this book, Philippine Society and Revolution, by Joma Sison, and who is actually, I think, is still a patron saint of many of us who have been part of that student movement. Now, si Fe and myself were both part of that. And as the years went by, we got a little more nuanced. And because we are Christians, we have begun to look at this from the lenses of scripture and what God is about and what He's doing in history, no? So tonight we will have Fe show us a little bit of the perspectives that have shaped her scholarship, and also now we would like to offer to you as a way of being able to move forward in the political crisis that we are experiencing. So, Fe?
Yeah. I'm a product of UP. I first finished music, tapos history. And I got involved with SCAUP, yun yung pinakang radical na organization during my time in UP. And so after graduation, I got a teaching job sa University of the East, Music and History. And dala-dala ko na yung activism. So what was that activism like? Kasi at that time, may political crisis sa Pilipinas. Marcos was about to end his second term and hanggang second term lang ang president. And apparently, parang ayaw din naman niyang matapos yung term niya, di ba? And so there was no other way mag-declare ng martial law na nandun naman sa Constitution at that time, the president can do that. So that's actually what happened. He declared martial law and he lost all freedoms. Mga teachers, mga estudyante, mga negosyante, lahat-lahat na apektado at one-man rule. At tagal-tagal no, nabot ng almost 20 years. Itong study na to took place in 1980-81. So ibig sabihin may 14 years of martial law na. Ibig sabihin noon, ang tagal-tagal ng Pilipinas, walang korte, walang election, walang usual government na inaasahan mo, kundi one-man rule talaga at military yung nandyan sa ating gobyerno. So bakit kami nagkaroon ng middle class study? Member ako noon ng urban mass movement. Itong urban mass movement na napakalakas, pamula before martial law hanggang nung sinuppress, nung dineclare yung martial law, nawala yung mass movement. Pero by 1980, lumalakas na uli kasi nagkaroon na ng lakas ng loob na uli na paunti-unti, mga prayer rallies, mga lightning rallies, kung ano-anong forms, hanggang sa lumakas yan. Ang malakas dito talaga nag-oorganisa yung mga progressive left, from center to left. Kasi malinaw sa amin na dapat wakasan na yung control ng mga elite sa gobyerno, kailangan maging mas democratic na yan at magkaroon na ng mas magagandang programa pang ekonomiya, pang politika para sa mga tao naman talagang mahihirap magkaroon ng tamang programa pang ekonomika. Kaya yun naman talagang very attractive sa amin yung panahon yon. Kaya lang, ang orientation namin politically is this. Kailangan lumakas yung armed struggle sa countryside for the eventual seizure of government. And therefore, hanggat maaari, imulat ang lahat ng tao, including sa cities, urban centers, para i-support of the people's armed struggle in the countryside, para makuha nga yung gobyerno at magpatupad na ng tamang pamamahala. Pero ito nga naging problema namin noon. Lumalakas yung urban mass movement, nakikita namin, hindi naman pala karamihan doon mga workers o peasants, karamihan mga middle class. Kaya nagtataka kami, paano ba ito? Ano ba itong mangyayari dito? Saan pa ito patungo? So yung study na yon, na pinag-aralan namin, inalam namin dalawang purpose, ganong kalaki middle class, ano ba ang political tendencies, ito ba'y makakatulong sa pagbabago talaga o hindi? So ang naging resulta nito, kung ikukumpara doon sa naunang pag-aaral ni Joe Malsison noong 1971, nandiyan na ba yung ating figures? 1971, ayan, oo. Yung sa kaliwa, nakikita mo, ang estimate dyan, yung foreign and local capital and businessmen and all that ay 1%, tapos ang middle class, 7%. Tapos after that, workers and peasants na lang sa agriculture, etc., mga 90%. Ngayon, yung 83 study namin, bakit malaki ang diferensya kasi matagal na rin naman, di ba? Yung foreign capitalists ay 1.6, yung big Filipino capitalists and landowners ay 2%. Tapos yung middle class ay 34.1%. Pagkatapos noon, yung sa ibaba noon, yung mga workers and peasants na ay yung workers ay 21% at yung mga peasants and agriculture ay 41.3%. So pag tinotal mo yung workers and peasants at inihambing mo yung middle class, ang middle class almost one half of the peasants and workers, which to our revolutionary orientation, yun ang talagang magdadala ng pagbabago, yung peasants and workers. Kaya sabi namin, malaki pala. Almost half of the workers and peasants. So there must be some changes in the tactics and strategy ng progressive movement at the time. So who are the members of the middle class? For the first time, na-define ito ng mas malinaw. No? Halimbawa mo, owners of small to medium enterprises, yung mga negosyanteng modest capital with family or hired workers, yung mga artisans, number 2, artisans and craftsmen, o yung mga gumagawa ng sapatos, furniture, yung ganyan, mga mumunting mga bagay-bagay. Tapos owners of service stores and shops, marami yan. Yung mga na service, halimbawa, mga parlors, yung mga hardware, hardware stores yun. Pero yung mga nagsisilbi, mga gyms, mga ganyan, mga service, maliliit na mga service na mga companies. Tapos yung self-employed professionals, marami yan. Yung mga gumagraduate ng kolehiyo, mga doktor, dentista, lawyer, accountant. Meron silang sariling opisina, hindi sila nag-i-employo. Pero itong number 5 ang pinakang interesting. Bakit? Nandito yung mga professionals, managers, employees, workers. Saan? Sa mga economic institutions, engaged in marketing, in sales, in finance, in communications, in overseas work. Pwede dito yung BPOs ngayon, kasama dyan. So marami yan, marami yung mga yan. Political institutions na in charge of security and order in society, kamukha ng government, ng police, ng army, etc. Yan, mga political institutions for keeping order in society. Then yung pangatlo, under number 5, yung mga ideological and cultural institutions. Ano yan? Very important. Family, church, schools, media, NGOs, arts, entertainment, where we are, Ate Melba. So, ang realization namin noon, yung mga rallies noon, before martial law, basically estudyante, tsaka mga teachers, a few professionals, pero may kasama kaming urban poor, peasants. Pero, ano yun, malaki. Kaya lang, ditong after nung 80s na, nag-iba na yung composition ng mga rallies, saka middle class na talaga. Middle class na talaga yung bulk at saka nagli-lead. At hindi naramdaman ng mga progressive left na iba ito, iba ang complexion. Kasi kasama na yung small business, kasama na yung big business. So naaalarm na din sa ano ba ito bang political force na ito, ano ito? Tinawag na namin middle class, kaya nag-middle class study. Tingnan ng potential. And ang conclusion namin noon, kasi nandun pa rin ako sa progressive left, na sinabi namin na, malaki nga, pero hindi siya politically radical. Kaya pabayaan na lang natin yung middle class na yan, wag na natin tutok natin na yung organisahin natin yan, in support lang, pero hindi sila talagang maaasahan. Doon pa rin sa dating orientation, workers and peasants, with some leaders of the revolutionary left to lead a total revolution na hindi naman mabilisan pero patungo doon. Kaya ang nangyari, yung middle class na yon ay nandiyan ang lahat pero para nagkakaroon na ng division, merong yellow, merong red, nagkakaroon ng kulay-kulay. Kaya medyo naguguluhan na rin ang mga nasa middle class. Pero malakas talaga yung middle class doon. Kaya by 83, lalo na with the death of Ninoy Aquino, lalo na yan, middle class yan. Lumawak talaga yung middle class to the point na, yun na nga, nangyari. Kasi naman, si Marcos naman, nagkaroon na siya ng 14 years. Gusto pang idugtong si Imelda. kakandidato pa. So how many years na sila? Abuti sila ng 20 years. Incredible. Parang sobra na, tama na, di ba? Yung ganun ang feeling ng lahat ng tao. Kaya yung middle class na yun, palaki ng palaki, mga empleyado, lahat na, mga nasa opisina, small business, big business. Tsaka nag-crisis na rin ang ekonomiya. Bumagsak na rin yung export-led economy ng martial law, ng New Society. Bumagsak na rin yung inaasahan nilang mga negosyo na napunta sa crony. Yung mga crony na ang nagnenegosyo. So talagang may abuse na, economics at saka political. I-extend pa ba ito? I-extend pa ba? Nawawala ng freedom. Ang dami nang na-torture, dami nang nakulong, dami nang nangyayaring hindi na wili-wili talaga. Kaya at that time, people were ready for change. Kaya yung urban mass movement na yun, makikita mo na talagang nakakatakot na. Kaya si Marcos, nagtawag na ng election. Due na rin naman siya talagang bumaba under his new constitution, 87, dapat bumaba na rin siya. Kaya nagkaroon ng election, ang nangyari naman doon sa election malino kung sinong nanalo, si Marcos ba o si Cory. Sa feeling ng tao, si Cory yung nanalo. Feeling ni Marcos, hindi, dineclare niya siya. So dalawa silang nag-o-taking at the time. Isa sa San Juan, isa sa Malacanang. Biro niyo yun? Kaya ang gulo-gulo ng tao, pero puro rallies yan, urban rallies, Manila, Cebu, kung saan na, kumalat na. Kaya mararamdaman mo may revolutionary situation. And the left, kami mga nasa progressive left, medyo nagugulumihan kami kasi there was a time nga na kausap na ako nitong mga nasa burgi, yung mga bourgeois, yellow, ganyan. O pwede bang makipag-alyansa na sa left? Kasi alam naman yan, nila na nandun ako. Sabi ko na hindi naman ho kayo pwedeng magkasundo. Sabi ko gano'n, kasi talagang iba yung program. Hindi ganyan. I was just being frank with them. Hindi na natuloy yung mga ganyan. Kung meron mang alyansa, talagang mabuhay na mabuhay. So nag-succeed yung people power by 86. Marcos had to leave dahil ang lakas na. At nagkaroon ng sa EDSA at talagang it's an unusual people power, non-violent, and merong element na wala sa ibang mundo. Very religious. Nagdadasal ang tao, nagro-rosaryo, nandyan si Virgin Mary, nandyan yung image ni Jesus Christ. Nasa crowd of millions. It's so unusual and people were amazed. Walang violence, it ended well. And parang fiesta. And so imagine, sila Marcos, they had to be flown to Hawaii and all that. And all of a sudden, we were relieved. There was liberty, back to freedom. And then yun, hanggang kay Cory. But tama din naman ang progressive left. Bakit? Hindi rin naman talaga nagbago yung gobyerno. It's the same elite democracy down the line hanggang to the present. Nagpapalit-palit lang tuwing election. Papalit-palit yung mga oligarchy. Hindi talaga napapalitan yung economic program, economic policy. Kahit anong ingay ng mga progressive, eto ang tamang gawin. Hindi talaga nila din magagawa. Kasi elite sila eh. Hindi nila kailangan yung ganung programa eh. It's so beneficial to them. And yung mga progressives naman, kahit anong ingay, ngayon, nagrarally pa rin tayo. Pinapakiusap natin, baguhin yung economic program, baguhin to, baguhin na. Ganun pa rin. Na-COVID pa tayo. So you see, it's not an easy situation now. Even if we have elections and all that, parang lalo na ngayon, 6 years term lang ang presidente, matatapos na si Presidente Duterte. Or would he want to, siyempre, with his health, di na natin maasahan yung tugtong niya, pero pwede niyang ilagay ang anak niya, pwede niyang ilagay yung kanyang successor, and then the continuation of the same regime. And I think people would like major changes again. We have this need again, just like nung 83 during that people, noong martial law and after martial law na mga rallies, we have the same need again na meron naman sana ng pagbabago. Baguhin naman sana yung economic programs. Baguhin naman sana yung marami ng taong, lalo na ng ngayon, maraming gutom and all that. So yung middle class na nag-people power from time to time ay sumusulpot yan lagi sa rallies, ganyan. Pero napansin ba nyo, pakonti yung rallies, di ba? At kung tatanungin mo tao ngayon, lalo na may COVID, buti pa sa London, buti pa sa Germany, nagra-rally sila. Kahit na may COVID, bilib ako sa kanila. Pero dito hindi man mapapalabas ang Pilipino. And hindi naman sa kaduwagan. I think we're just practical. We just cannot afford to be sick, di ba? In this country. Ang hirap-hirap yata magpa-doktor, magpa-hospital, etc. Kaya yung potential ng people power that we had, and we even toppled down a dictator through people power, is that possible ngayon na pwede tayong mag-push for more radical programs, etc.? Kaya ito yung maganda sa studies na ito na nakita natin na palaki ng palaki ang middle class kasi enumerate ko nga na yung pala kasama yung mga owners, small business, service, self-employed, professionals, nasa economic, political, and ideological and cultural institutions. Practically, napakalaki ng middle class. And pakonti rin ang nasa agriculture sapagkat nagmo-modernize, karamihan na sa agriculture. Dati mga anak na nasa abroad na eh. Yun namang mga industries natin, hindi naman lumalaki ng kamukha ng manufacturing sa highly industrialized countries, kundi packaging pa rin, nagpapackage lang ng mga produkto. So hindi naman tayo tunay na maraming workers din. So hindi mo na, yung sigurong class analysis na yun, analysis ay i-refine at itong middle class, nakikitaan ko ng political potential talaga when we need something changed. Not necessarily revolutionary, but at least we can move forward from a situation of parang wala tayong magawa. But this kind, ngayon with the COVID and all that, are we going to have people power? Definitely not. Pero we are going to have an election. And that power of the middle class na ang electoral is a very middle class activity. Kung magigising ang tao, magkakaisa, and then aayusin natin yung mga masa, i-educate natin, we probably can come out with good candidates and really elect good government officials and enlighten them about programs, really what to do with the economic program of the country, etc. So yun yung sinasabi kong people power of the middle class is a potential changer in our society, not revolutionary in a sense, but at least we can move forward from a situation of helplessness. And so this is what I want to share, and we can discuss some more. Thank you.
Fe. Salamat kay Fe. And now we would like to hear from Jahil and Marie and our viewers, no? And their interaction with her.
Oo, siguro maganda Ate Melba, simulan natin sa tanong ng ating viewers at ito kay Veronica Esther Mendoza. Sabi niya, has the profile or landscape of the middle class of the 1980s is it any different from the middle class today? And if yes, what are those differences and what caused these changes? So by way of answering our question, can the middle class be a strong political force? The answer is yes. Pero ang tanong ngayon ni Veronica Esther Mendoza, sino ba itong power na ito ngayon? Sino itong pwersa na ito ngayon? At ano yung pinagkaiba nito ngayon sa dati, Ate Fe? Nakamute po ang mic.
Dahil hindi naman tayo talaga nag-i-industrialize, malakas ang ating service sectors. Yung mga nagbebenta, marketing, finance, yung mga ganyan, professions, self-employed or not, small businesses, medium businesses. Lumaki talaga yung, under the definition ng study namin, lumaki talaga yung middle class. And it's, hindi talaga lumalaki yung workers eh. Saka yung sa agriculture, ewan ko, kasi ang malaki ngayon plantations na multinationals, so hindi yung mga workers and peasants ng China o workers ng England or Germany at the time. Iba yung complexity ng ating lipunan. Kaya iisipin mo pag sinabi mong middle class, medyo maganda income niya, magandang buhay. Marami sa ating poor middle class. Middle class ka by what you do. Pero mahirap ka naman, pobre ka naman, di ba? So, yun ang complexity ng Philippine society. Kaya siguro, naghahanap din ng isang solusyon na kakaiba sa nangyayari sa ibang mga bansa. What's the other question?
Pero meron akong follow-up muna doon, Ate Fe, no?
Yeah.
Kasi I think ang parang pinanggagalingan ni Ma'am Veronica in relation to our conversation, di ba? Kung dati we can rely on the middle class for political action, sa ngayon ba can we still rely? Kung nagbago na yung color, kung nagbago na yung quality, no? At yung mga disposition sa buhay ng middle class ngayon, can we really rely on the middle class for political action, for political transformation?
I think so. Kasi ang maaasahan lang na middle class where we can really affect some changes of leadership in government is through election. And we never paid attention to election, by the way. We never had a real serious voters education. But for me, if the middle class, which I mentioned, lalo na yung nasa ilalim na fifth middle class, where you have family, church, schools, media, etc., pati military nandyan, you know, we have this kind of voters education or consciousness that governance is very important and our participation is very important. How we choose our leaders or who should run, what qualities of candidates should be there, what kind of programs should we have, yung mga ganyan. We are educating that mass of electors. Ewan ko kung mas marami ang na bumoboto from the agriculture or from the industrial workers. I don't have that data. But I still believe that this political exercise can create some changes in our society. Hindi naman revolutionary, of course. But yung bang magkakaroon naman talaga ng pagbabago, yun yung nakikita kong potential lagi ng middle class.
Ayun. Aside from, ako lang, meron lang akong tanong, Ate Fe, no? Based on your readings, kasi ikaw ay very in touch with what has happened in history, bukod sa election, and we are all for that, non-violent, and practicing our democracy, bukod sa election, ano pa ang pwedeng gawin ng mga middle class para talagang maging isa silang malakas na puwersa ng pagbabago?
Well, yung mga NGOs natin kasi, ang nangyari ay ang tinuturuan ng nag-oorganisa ng urban poor, ng mga workers, ng mga peasants. Pero ano ba ino-organize sila for what? Are they really empowered? Diba? Are they really becoming participatory in a democratic process, in a democracy like ours? What are we doing with our NGO work? Diba? What is the consciousness raising for? We have to backtrack and review what we are doing. Kasi ako napansin ko nung kami sa women, kung saan kami napunta, syempre women, gender, sexuality and all that. Pero in a way, how are we ano bang ino-organize namin ba yung mahihirap na mga kababaihan? Para ano? Para consciousness na against patriarchy, against class, against what? Diba? Parang there should be organizing in such a way na maging mabuting mamamayan din tayo. Makita din natin ang role natin sa mga kinakailangan political changes, economic policies na kinakailangan natin. Dapat napapalinaw natin sa mga tao yan. Halimbawa mo, ngayon, ilaw, tubig, gasolina, lahat yan na-privatize. Pag nasa private yan, napakamahal yan, wala kang control sa presyo yan, negosyo yan. Hindi ba dapat yan nasa kamay ng gobyerno? O kung mulat ang citizens mo, we can demand that from our government. Hindi pwede yan. O pagka ginagawa ng isang kandidatong presidente, hindi natin siya iboboto kasi alam natin makakapinsala sa atin yan. We have not been organizing in such a way that citizens can really be proactive in governance. Kasi yun ang may impact sa buhay natin. Sila nagpapatakbo ng ekonomiya natin. Sila ang humahawak ng mga mabagay-bagay, ng edukasyon, ng lahat. Kamukha lang ng education. Ako, history. Napakahina ng pagtuturo ng history. Hindi ko na halos maramdaman na makakapagturo pa kami. Dati nasa 4th year kami. Nababasa high school. First year. Ngayon, nasa grade 5 and 6 na lang ang Philippine history. My goodness, paano na ang kamalayan ng Pilipino? These things should be attended to by people like the middle class who are already in the place, in the arena, and should be active and saying, this is wrong. Hindi dapat ganito.
Ate Fe, I really admire yung optimism po ninyo at inyong fervor, political and fervor for social transformation. And maybe Ate Melba can also comment on this question. Sa amin po, sa mundo namin, sa sociologists, mixed po yung aming appreciation sa middle class. Kasi the middle class tends to be concerned first and foremost about their social mobility. So ibig sabihin, kung gusto mo ng magandang buhay, maalwang buhay, maayos na buhay, you don't rock the boat. Kaya, halimbawa, sa pag-aaral ng middle class sa Singapore, for example, hindi mo pwedeng mong inspire ang middle class na magkaroon sila ng political consciousness kasi pag ginawa nila yon, it's like shooting themselves in the foot. Kasi ibig sabihin, mas magiging concerned yung gobyerno sa welfare, mas magiging concerned yung gobyerno sa pangangalaga ng mga mahihirap, and taxpayers' money yun, and so forth. So parang at the same time masyadong distracting for the middle class. I'm almost painting the middle class in a very extreme manner kasi yun ang pagkaintindi ko sa middle class ngayon eh. Mas maaasahan yata natin na boboto ang mga mahihirap kaysa ang middle class, for example. What do you think po?
Oo.
Nakamute
Status
po.
ko.
Nakamute.
Mas grabe ngayon.
Siguro,
Yes, Ate Melba.
yung kung isasabi ni Fen na complexity ng ating middle class, I think we need to frame it within our cultural parameters. Number one, let's face it, meron tinatawag na cultural divide. In other words, yung mga middle, upper middle, pwede rin yung middle and lower middle at saka sa baba. In other words, while it is true na ang middle class is a potentially political force. And totoo rin according ni sabi nung sino pang sociologist si Pierre Bourdieu. Sabi niya you can almost predict yung mga lifestyle choices ng mga middle class simply by knowing yung kanilang social location.
Status
Now, but I think we need to think carefully yung fact na ang middle class ng Pilipinas mas volatile, no? Let me look at a little bit yung some of the things that I have said. Yung cultural divide kasi, let us face it, karamihan sa atin ng mga middle class who are educated, most of our political, social, cultural theories galing sa labas. And we have yet, I think, understand yung dapat nating theoretical frame when we are thinking about yung empirical facts on the ground.
Yeah.
Sa totoo lang, sabi ko nga noong unang panahon doon sa ating mga kabalikat, mga kapanalig, no, whether left or right or sa National Council of Churches, we have yet to really develop a political theory that is grounded. Yung tinatawag na ground theory. No, grounded sa mga realities natin. Hindi yung galing dun sa historical nila Max Weber and all of this, no?
Or Marx
sa labas lahat yan eh. Kaya nagkamali tayo kahit yung Philippine Society and Revolution. Napulot lang yun sa kay Mao Zedong, sabi nitong si Mario, no? In other words, we have to learn to think ano yung ground level natin ng mga realities at bago tayo mag-theorize, no? But at the same time, it is also true na meron namang makukuha sa mga sa labas, ano. Halimbawa, si Eric Fromm, sinabi niya long time ago, mga 1960s yata ito, the most conservative classes are actually the very rich and the very poor, no? Why? Because yung very rich, they think yung privileges nila, yung kanilang mga rights, mga entitlements, are really the state of nature. They cannot imagine society, no, na they are stripped of these privileges. So very conservative sila. Any change dito sa state of nature na ito, they will resist and fight for. Ngayon, yung mga poor is the same. Akala nila yung kanilang poverty will be eternal. It is the state of nature. And things cannot change. I remember talking doon sa isang binatilyo, doon sa Smoky Mountain before, no? And sabi ko, meron ditong mga bagong faith-based organizations coming, you know, to help dito sa Smoky Mountains. Sabi ng bata, ay ma'am, marami na po nagpunta dito ng mga NGO, mga 30 na nga po sila dito eh. But our condition remains the same. He has no great expectations that things will change. So yung mental model ng very rich and very poor, pareho. They think yung condition nila is the state of nature. It cannot change, no? So, at the same time, merong tinatawag na middle class. Yung middle class is very interesting eh. Ito yung sinasabi ni Jael, ano? Na sa totoo lang, ang middle class can either side with the rich. Yung sinasabi na yung gusto mo ng social mobility, no? Ang tawag dyan sa anthropology, social passing. You want to pass yourself up. Once meron kang pera, gusto mo meron ka ng kotse, may bahay ka, may gano'n. All the trappings of what it means to be rich, quote unquote, no? Yung social passing. Now, merong gano'n, You do have middle class people na ang forward movement nila, gusto nila umakyat doon sa ladder, no? But at the same time, meron ding mga middle class, and I would like to think tayo yon, no? Yung mga educated na, no? Who actually are prepared to experience downward mobility. No? Hindi upward, downward. And I hope yung mga faith-based na organizations, yung staff ng mga churches natin are prepared to experience downward mobility for the sake of our poor. At marami rin namang ganito, yung mga nagsasakripisyo sa mga NGO, nagsasakripisyo sa mga ministries, no? Downward mobility yan eh. And yet mga middle class yan, they're educated, they have expertise, they have some resources, no? To be able to travel and so on. In other words, yung middle class is the most ambiguous at saka volatile na force in society. It can go upward or downwards. Ngayon, siguro ang ating agenda as a church community is to harness itong mga middle class who are prepared. Yung sinasabi nga, and really, this is part of the, if you're a Christian, sabi ni Paul, you know, if you want to know Jesus, you learn to be what? Crucified with him, no? To bear the marks of the cross in your own body. Ibig sabihin, yung sabi niya, I determined to know no other thing than Jesus and him crucified. In other words, yung capacity for sacrifice, capacity for downward mobility. This is the challenge for those of us who are middle class, whether we are Christians or not, and especially if we are Christians. Sa totoo lang, kung tayo ay seryoso ng mga Kristiyano, wala tayong choice. You have to choose downward mobility. So ngayon, this is what we, in other words, even if I'm rich, pag ako naging Kristiyano, kagaya ni Zacchaeus, talagang merong downward mobility yan. He has to restore yung kanyang mga nanakaw and maggawa ng reparations fourfold. Ganon. Yun ang tunay na Christian na instinct. So, merong potential ang middle class to do something. We don't have to feel powerless. And ang problema ngayon ganito, with the martial law experience, nag-collapse yung old party system. Meron kang nationalista, may liberal ka. Ngayon, wala na. In other words, whoever has the levers of power, no? Lahat nagma-migrate doon. So, gagawa siya ng sarili niyang party, no? Tapos, everybody migrates. Kaya yung Liberal Party before, dahil sila yung party in power, marami sila. Ngayon, wala na sila. Nag-dwindle na. Pumunta lahat dito kay Duterte. So, ngayon, I think ang bagong phenomenon ngayon is yung talagang very extreme ang polarization. Yung mga Dutertards na tinatawag o yung mga dilawan, no? Now, ang problema, I think, is that we tend to treat issues as binary opposites, no? Either you are for strong authoritarianism or nandun ka sa anarchist na liberalism. Ito yung problema ng mga Amerikano in the US, no? Or you are for pro-abortion, pro-life, or gay rights, gay rights, o kaya justice and human rights. In other words, merong ganong tingin na polar opposites ito when actually hindi dapat We should care about all the rights of people, whether it's the unborn, whether it's gay people, whether it's the poor, no? Mahirap yung pinopolarize natin lahat. Ang problema kasi, ang utak natin palaging either or, no? We always think in terms of binary opposites. Now, I think it's time that we need to go beyond party politics, no? it's very disturbing the fact na hindi ka pwede magsalita against Duterte, no? Babariling ka kagad ng mga tao. Ano ka naman ng kuan ng dilawang ka naman in all this, no? Now, I think we need to go beyond all of that, no? Sabi nga nitong and face up to the fact na yung human frailty is present in whatever party, whatever ideology. No, yun ang lesson namin nila Fe. Yung which we went through yung revolutionary upheavals natin, ano? Sabi nga nitong yung poet critic na si Alan Tate, is a critic Amerikano. Sabi niya, there are really only two kinds of writers. Those who believe in original sin and those who do not. No? In other words, sa political theory and political beliefs, the same. You either believe in the perfectibility of society through social engineering, kagaya ng mga Marxists, o kagaya ni Skinner, who says, we should start thinking of beyond freedom and dignity, ganyan, no? And systematize yung reward and punishment in society. Yung ganon ka-optimistic. Or, you believe like the reformers, no? Doon siya tinatawag na total depravity that thwarts all our efforts for change. And actually, precisely because we believe in original sin, it is important that there is accountability. It is important that there should be a rule of law. No one should be above the law. Kasi alam natin, once anybody has power, given human sin and corruption, when the restraints are off, no, you get what? A monstrous Superman. So this is very important, precisely because we believe in the radicality, no, of human sin. Merong mga checks and balance. May mga institutional constraints so that we discipline yung mga sinful na drives in our nature. Certainly, that's why we want some social arrangement that is just and that helps people to be accountable. So, I think importante yung doctrine of original sin, whether you're writers or social scientists, no? And I think it's important also to be very realistic. The world is too much with us. Walang institusyon, not even a church, which can lay claim to infallible na orthodoxy. No? Meron tinatawag din naman na Marxist orthodoxy, whether it's Soviet or Chinese, Mao Zedong, etc. Or Leninist ka, no? I think we need to go out of that. Dahil walang party or ideology which has a monopoly of insight and right practice, no? Ang sa akin, at any given moment, because we are Christians, the truly historic and moral choice is always to answer yung tanong ni Moses, no? After itong golden calf na idolatry. Sabi niya, who is on the Lord's side? Hindi importante yung ikaw left o ikaw right, ikaw dilawan, ikaw Dutertards. Hindi importante yun eh. Ang importante, who truly is on the Lord's side. Sa issue na to, where is the Lord? Asan siya? No? Asan siya dyan? Anong tama? Anong mali? And I don't think we need to frame ourselves ng mga usual na party politics and usual ideological na, no? And all of these things, yung mga ideological divide natin. Or even confessional divide if you're a Christian, no? Ang importante lang, nasaan ka at nasaan ang gawalaw ng kamay ng Diyos sa ating kasaysayan. Yun ang dapat basahin. And that should be, bakit po? Sapagkat, sabi nga ni Alexander Solzhenitsyn, the line separating good and evil passes not through states, no? Kay China, kay Pilipinas, kay Amerika, kay Soviets, ganon-ganon. It doesn't pass between classes even, no? May mga very rich who become like Zacchaeus. Meron ding mga very poor who become oppressive. Yung Chinese Communist Party, you just have a transfer of power, no? from yung tinatawag na vanguard ng proletariat, no? Doon sa mga old na she, no, ng mga Chinese. But it's just a transfer of power. In other words, yung good and evil cuts through everybody between classes. It's not even between political parties, no? But sabi, it is right through every human heart and through all human hearts. In other words, tatanungin natin, nasa ng puso ng Diyos? Asa ng pulso ng banal na spirito? At yan is no respecter of party lines. It's no respecter of ideological lines. Ang importante, dinidiscern natin, saan ang tama at mali dito? In a time ng fake news, no? Saan ang tama at mali dito? Ang problema, marami tayong mga reflexes eh. Hindi ko paniniwalaan niya si kanya kasi ganito eh. No. Pakinggan natin lahat and i-discern asan ang kamay ng Diyos sa kasaysayan natin ngayon. At ano ang tama at mali. So, siguro yun yung where we should be coming from, as we think through itong complexity ng being middle class. Kasi mga middle class tayo eh. Itong problema natin eh. We don't really know saan tayo lulugar minsan. Dahil sometimes we go this way or that. Volatile eh. So, siguro we would be interested in whatever yung mga viewers natin have to say about this, no? Both si Fe and myself. Dahil dumaan kami sa ganitong yugto sa aming mga buhay.
Yes. Salamat, Ate Melba. Maganda yung tahak ng ating usapan ngayon. I think one of the things na ma-observe natin, no, Kuya Jail, kanina nabanggit mo din ito, parang may fear, no, sa middle class. Kahit na pinakita natin sila, 4 million yan, may pwersa yan, pero may fear. In fact, one of our viewers shared her insight sa kanyang field, no. Sabi ni Veronica Esther Mendoza, medyo, I need to backtrack a little bit. Ang dami kasing magagandang comments ng ating mga viewers.
Yeah.
Ayan. Asa na ba yun? Oo, Kuya Jail. Alam mo, nakakatawa eh. Very yung ating mga viewers, very active sila. Sabi niya, so based on her descriptive study daw, that she did among NGO sectors, mostly alam naman natin na ang mga nasa NGO, mga nag-lead dyan ay mga middle class naman talaga. From the lower, the middle, to the upper middle class. It seems like the NGOs are doing less advocacy as they may be red tagged, so may fear. Katulad ng sinabi mo kanina, Kuya Jail, fear of shaking the system because it's already working for them, ano? And
Yes.
instead of focusing more on welfare services to vulnerable sectors, especially on doing relief work due to the pandemic, so may takot. At sabi naman ni team mo, papunta tayo dyan. So aside from the FBOs, observation naman ni team mo sa mga FBOs, among the middle class Christian communities, there are more intellectuals, nasabi niyan kanina Ate Nava and Ate Fe, that make contextual hermeneutics available, etc. But it seems like even the change of teaching does not change the norm of inaction. Can you please comment on this? And is there a better way? Is there a better way to move forward? Probably yun yung gustong sabihin ni team dito.
Ano yun? Inaction ako? Kanina
merong inaction ang mga intellectual?
Inaction. Because of fear. I believe because of fear.
Fear. Fear of COVID. Fear of the government.
Fear of being red tagged. Fear of the government. Yes.
Well, yun na nga yung problem natin. You know, as middle class, you don't have to be identified as red or yellow or whatever. Sa akin, may autonomy pa rin ng middle class. Meron pa rin nalidirang autonomy. Because what? Ang kailangan lang naman natin yung basic freedoms eh. Halimbawa mo, let's focus on the coming election lang. Coming election. Ang middle class nasa mga issues. Issues of poverty, issues ng ganito, issues ng COVID, issues ng incompetence ng government, issues, etc. Why are we not educating the people about winning an election that we get better leaders with better programs of for the economy, sa kabuhayan and all that. I mean, we can be very, very short term and very, very practical for the moment because that's what we need. That's what we need. Yung hunger, yung poverty, Kailangan ma-address yan. Otherwise, sasabog tayo. And the middle class has that capacity. Ang regret ko sa middle class, ang regret ko, nasa mga iba-ibang issues. And meron tayong coming election on 22. 1 year and a half na lang yan. And we have to have a voters education from the middle class pababa. Hindi na bala yung pataas. They know what to do. Pero itong mga masa at saka itong tayong middle class among ourselves, if we educate ourselves, anong klaseng leaders, anong qualifications kailangan natin sa kanila, anong programs ang kailangan tutukan nila, and how do we vote, and how do we make bantay dyan sa proseso ng election natin. We have never done that. Alam nyo ba? We have never done that. NGOs have not even focused on that at all. Puro mga issues ng, halimbawa, issues ng rice tarification. We should be alerted about that kasi naghihirap ngayon ng farmers. Bakit? Wala, hanggang ngayon yung irrigation nila, problema nila. Hanggang ngayon problema nila yung pagbebenta ng palay nila, pababa yung presyo. Bakit? Kasi ang bumibili traders, bibili ng mura sa kanila, ang traders sa makikinabang kasi hindi nila madala sa Manila para diretso sila magbenta. Yung mga ganyan ba? These are issues that are very, very practical na dapat tinututukan nating middle class. Kasi tayo yung may capacity mag-educate ng masses and educate them so that in the next election, we ask for candidates and really watch the electoral process. Para malaman natin. Yes?
Ate Fe, I really appreciate again yung sinasabi ninyo na parang believing in the political potential of the middle class for social transformation. Pero gusto po naming ni Marie na i-highlight yung siguro mga reservations or mga alinlangan ng ating audience kasi in the spirit of our ISIP-ISAK conversation, yung question ni Tim, nagaling siya dun sa point na, well, ang dami-dami ng mga pagtuturo tungkol sa social action lalo na sa mga middle-class Christians. But how come middle-class Christians are not doing anything? I feel that si Tim Ko would be referring to many evangelical churches that are middle-class.
Anong social actions ang tinuro? Like what?
Right. I mean, yeah. So broadly, maybe Tim can comment.
Yan naman tinuturo.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. And that's middle class, hindi ba? That's middle class. Pero
kaya nga sinasabi ko, let's get down to social reality. What is the most immediate need that we can have impact on our economy? To me, economy is very important. Even our middle class are poor. Naghihirap na rin ang middle class at lalo na ngayon with the COVID na ang economy natin bagsak na. Imagine, doon sa meeting ng presidente, sabihin ba naman ng Secretary of Finance na our economy is okay. We will be able to overcome this and we will have this and that. My God, you have a Secretary of Finance na parang nasa mundo ba siya? Ang daming walang trabaho, maraming nagugutom. My goodness, anong klaseng yan nangyayari sa atin during and even after the COVID, Kaya kung ganyan sila, can we not get better people to govern us? Can we not get people, a president who know exactly what to do with the economy? Yung mga ganyan. Definitely. Kasi nga, nakatutok ang mga NGOs natin, mga ginagawa natin, pagkatakot-takot na pagmumulat, yung most practical and most immediate, hindi natin nagagawa. Di ba?
Ang isang hesitation siguro, Ate Fe, Ate Melba, ng ibang mga viewers natin is that baka yung problema mismo sa middle class. baka yung problema tayo. Oo. Kasi halimbawa, sabi ni Pastor John Soriano, ang ganda ng point niya, I mean, we're bringing this up in the spirit of collegial, and communal understanding. Sabi ni Pastor John, paano kaya natin ma-reconcile ngayon na kapag pinag-uusapan ng foundedness na kung saan according sa latest SW survey, ay mataas pa din ang rating ng presidente. Puro sa grassroots lahat, karamihan galing ng suporta ni PRRD. In fact, including the middle class. Tapos sinasabi niya, tayo mga middle class, we have the sophistication of our education and lumalabas sa ating mga social analysis. Halimbawa, yung mga pinag-uusapan natin ngayon dito, pero mukhang hindi naman makakasabay yung mga nasa ibaba, naintindihan ang mga isyong ibinabahagi natin. Therefore, yung tanong ni Pastor John, how do we go downward mobility na maging sa ating diskurso? Maaring hindi nila kilala yung mga kino-quote nating mga philosophers or mga theorists or yung mga analysis natin. Actually, I think that's a very honest, honest assessment. Sige, Ate Melba.
Kaya nga actually, mahalaga yung lahat tayo ng mga middle class. Bumababa talaga. In other words, in our own lifestyles, in our own, meron tayong very intentional. Unang-una, baguhin yung bad theology na napulot natin kung saan. Na ang church walang pakialam dapat dito sa mga usapin sa lipunan. Baguhin yon. And that is number one yan sa mga middle class na Christians. No? Na in other words, kasi we have been educated, again, galing sa labas. No? We have yet to really theologize out of our own context. No? Isa yon, number one. Number two, I think yung sa lifestyle natin, kagaya ko, halimbawa nung ako'y nagkaroon ng bahay at nandiyan ako sa Mayfield Invest dun sa Batasan, and I made a very intentional choice na I should leave my middle class church sa Diliman and pumunta ron sa daughter church namin sa Urban Poor, yung Batasan Bible Church. I stayed there for 10 years. At for the first 6-8 months, nakaupo lang ako doon, nakikinig ako sa pastor until of course, he found out na ako pala MA PhD at marunong mag-preach. But you know, I was prepared to be incarnational. No? In other words, hindi nila ako nagsasalita. Alam ko exactly what it is like na nakakasalamuha mo every Sunday ang isang komunidad na alam mo lang in theory kung ano yung mga problema nila, pero kung kasama ka nila, no, sinasamahan mo sila. Iba yun eh. And sa totoo lang, kahit yung mga NGO, yung mga faith-based, no? Konti lang dyan yung talagang why. Maraming mga NGO mayayaman. You know why? Because yung international funding agencies, at some point, mga decade ago, nag-ano sila, ayaw na nila nitong mga advocacy, ayaw na nila nitong mga political, ang gusto nila, economic reform, no? O, okay lang din yon, maganda yon. Kaya lang, ang nangyari, yung mga NGO started to calibrate yung kanilang mga concerns, no? So, naging economism na lang ang agenda. Nakalimutan yung political. Ngayon, nakita na naman na bad governance pala really is the root of poverty in many countries. So, bumabalik na naman yung mga funding agencies. In other words, yung mga faith-based organizations may not be people who believe in Marxism. Pero tama si Marx eh. The truth is that we are all determined by economics. We are not determined by our faith. In other words, kahit yung mga faith-based organizations, they go where the money is. Hindi gumagawa yan, no? Ng mga bagay na walang fund. I mean, let's face this. Let's face this. At the end of the day, it's the money. I remember even a church leader saying, you know, the reason we do development work is because that's where the money is.
That's where the funding is. Yeah, that's true.
This is a church leader.
Yeah.
So, ang feeling ko, teka muna, I mean, mga Kristiyano tayo. I mean, yung mga hindi faith-based na NGOs, okay lang yun eh. You know, tama si Marx, we all get determined by economics. And because economics is a very powerful force in human life. Tama yun. But, importante that we understand we have a higher God, hindi yung mammon. Kaya nga sabi ni Jesus, you cannot serve God and mammon. You cannot serve God and those who have levers of power, no? Makikiapid ka sa kanila, kagaya ng some of our mga kapatid natin ngayon na nasa gobyerno at ang master nila si Duterte, no? In other words, we have to be very, very straightforward about this. Who is on the Lord's side? Saan ka man naroroon? Kaya sa gobyerno ka, sa academe, sa NGO, sa church. Sino tunay na Lord mo? Who truly is your Lord? Is it God or Mammon? Who is on the Lord's side? Nasaan yung side na yon na hinahanap natin? No? So I think this is very important to understand and discern nasaan ang kingdom. Where is the kingdom at work? Doon tayo. Hindi yung asan yung pera, doon tayo.
Okay. Tama kayo, Ate Melba. Yan, parang si Ate Melba nagiging boy abunda ngayon. Binibigyan niya tayo ng salamin para manalamin tayo. Ayan. Pero gusto ko lang mag-shoutout sa mga viewers natin. Ate Melba, we acknowledge tama kayo. We need to search our hearts at kung nasaan tayo. Pero alam niyo po, speaking of downward mobility and always standing for those who are with, not just for, but with those who are marginalized, may mga viewers tayo dito gusto ko acknowledge. No? Shoutout tayo. Ito yung mga viewers natin who are also doing good works or doing yung kanilang middle class privileges ay ginagamit nila para sa iba. I want to say hi kay Sir Lacan Sumulong, Pastor Dan Pantoja. Ayan, nanalo nga sila. Yung business nila, sabi niya dito sa kanyang comment, the social action we're teaching our middle class is inclusive development and social entrepreneurship framed in justice, peace, and reconciliation. Ayan, sa kaalaman po ng marami, nanalo sila. They bagged the Oslo Business for Peace Award. Kaya sana maimbitahan ka namin, Pastor Dan, dito sa ISIP-ISAK to share that, how you do that, how you use your privileges for and with our people in the market. Yes, and si Tim Ho, you know, he has a ministry called Street Dwellers, yung ministry niya with the Street Dwellers. Yan si Tim, ano yan Chinese yan by, Phil Chayan, but he's using his privileges to help those who are in the margins. Ayan. Sige. Para naman may konti tayong pasilip na it's doable. This being downward mobile is possible.
Pero alam mo, Marie, oo nga pero alam mo, Marie, gusto ko rin i-highlight, no, dun sa, para lang sa conversation natin, I think yung marami talaga nag-hesitate dun sa ang dami-dami nating comments and it really, I don't know if we can cover everything. Pero yung iba, I think talaga malinaw sa kanila na the middle class are rather hopeless. Ano, Ate Fe, no? Halimbawa, sinasabi ni Arthur Alvendia.
I disagree.
Oo. You disagree? Pero, wait, let me just read sinabi ni
Pakinggan ko natin yung sinasabi.
Para alam nila that we hear them. Sabi ng isa nating viewer, I agree that, Pat, salamat, middle class can be a force but not a strong political force. So may ganun tayong mga insights. Yes.
Tapos sabi naman ni Arthur,
ang middle class natin, opportunistic, at wala naman tayong middle class na mulat, na imulat natin yung kapwa middle class natin. Nagmumulat tayo ng masa. And you know, yung middle class natin, kailangan imulat natin yan. Kasi yan ang nakabara. Do you get me? Yan ang naka-obstacle.
O kaya, engage also the rich, no?
Engage the middle class kasi
ano
ba ang pwedeng proseso magkaroon tayo ng pagbabago sa pamamahala? Paano mo babaguhin yung mga economic policies na talaga nagpapahirap sa bayan? Halimbawa mo, modernization ng jeepney. Nasaan na yung mga lumang jeepney? Mawawala ng hanap buhay. Di ba? Kung meron tayong middle class na nakakaboto na maglalagay dyan ng mga economic policy makers na hindi kamukha niyan si Dominguez o si Jokno na talaga naman pro-rich, pro-business, my God. I have to name them na talagang dismayado na ako sa kanila.
Oo.
I mean,
ako din.
Show me. You know, I don't know them from but you know, have to judge them by the kind of policies they have. Rice tarification. Tanungin mo yung magsasaka sa Nueva Ecija sa Bulacan kung anong hirap nila ngayon. You know, wala silang irigasyon, wala silang transport na makipag-unahan na magbenta ng bigas sa NFA na kailangan by the bulk. By the bulk, maliliit na farmers yan. So pumunta sila sa cooperative bago naman mabili ng cooperative. Uunahin nila yung mga rice traders na maliyaman yan, na may mga truck, mga bulto-bulto, makakapagbenta. They are left out. Ay, anong klaseng NFA yan, di ba? Yung mga ganyan. And sa transport na lang, bakit kailangan mong tanggalan ng libo-libong jeepney drivers? Aber, saan mo sila dadalhin? Hindi ba sila nasisindak dyan? Yan si Belgra ba yan? Ang ano yan? Ano ba yan? Yung transportasyon dyan? Hindi ba niya naiisip yun? I mean, ang middle class can empathize with that, and we have to educate the middle class so that we get better candidates, better electoral results. We bantay yan. Puntahan natin ang COMELEC, mag-organize tayo sa COMELEC. Paano ba nagdadayaan dyan? Paano ba kinokontrol ng technology dyan? I mean, middle class can do that. We have knowledge, we have skills, we can talk, we can open the minds of people, and we definitely sympathize with the poor. Hindi naman yung middle class na napaka puro makasarili na lang tayo. Lalo tayo Christians. Hindi tayo ganyan, di ba? hindi ko naman ibig sabihin, iwanan ng ibang causes ng ginagawa ng middle class. Nandiyan pa rin yan. But you know, we have 1.5 years. Are we going to have an election or not? Yung mga ganyan. If we are going to have an election, how ready are we to have changes in the results of the election? How ready are we? What are the issues talaga? How do we change governance? How do we change the lives of people? Middle class in this country are not rich, ha? We are becoming poorer and poorer, you know? And we don't have to go down anymore. Melba, ako poor na.
Lahat tayo walang income ngayon eh.
Kaya, hindi ko sinasabing revolutionary force ang middle class. In situations like this, the middle class can move and do something. Yun lang yung point ko.
Mm-hmm. I think ang problema is we are locked into this notion na dahil yung middle class maliit lang, no?
Hindi nga maliit eh.
Yun nga 34%. Dahil yung middle class maliit lang, wala siyang masyadong magagawa. Hindi kagaya ng working class, mga farmers, ganyan-ganyan. Meron pang residue yung subconscious natin ng Marxist analysis eh. Pero sa totoo lang, I think we need to understand na there is no way you measure importance by size. You can be a small minority and yet really change things. Alam niyo yung Russian Revolution, ilan lang yung mga nasa Duma. Kaya sila naging Bolsheviks.
Yeah.
Ang Chinese Communist Party, 1 million card carrying members lang yan. Ilan sila? 1.5 billion or whatever. In other words, the truth is, you do not measure yung relative importance ng any kind of potential movement by size. Kung akong tatanungin ninyo, it's at the heart of our faith. Sabi ng Lord, you can just be a mustard seed, no? And if you're faithful, it will grow into a tree. You can just be yeast. And yung yeast napakaliit. Yung salt napakaliit, no? But it can make a whole lot of difference. Sa cooking mo, it can make a whole lot of difference in baking bread, no? In other words, lahat yung mga metaphors na yan are minorities. They are not the majority. Ang yeast, yung mustard seed, yung salt, they are minority yan. You just need a pinch of salt to make a difference. Kaya yung mga Kristiyano na merong sense ng powerlessness, we cannot do much kasi konti lang naman tayo, etc. That's not true. We have education, we have all the skills that are necessary. Marami tayong social scientists. Even in the church. Ang church, kung akong tatanungin ninyo sa panahon na ito, the church is the only countervailing institution sa mga puwersa na umaapi sa atin sa panahon ito. And it is time that the church rises up, especially yung mga middle class. We rise up and do something. Sinasabi ni Fe, we learn to organize ourselves. Kasi iniisip natin, organize natin lang yung mga masa, no? Hindi lang yun. We organize ourselves also. We educate ourselves on what it means to walk with the poor. Hindi yung ine-educate lang natin siya. We educate ourselves what it really means to walk with the poor. Amen. Yung ganon. Para maintindihan natin ano talaga yung mga issue nila, ano talaga yung heartbeat nila. Ilan sa atin ang talagang bumababad, no? Kaya gusto ko yan sila Tim, na bumababad talaga sila sa mga street dwellers, no? In other words, we should not simply be academics. We should not simply be people na who theorize. We need to know what it is like on the ground. Ganon tayo. Kaya nga dito sa ISAK, I always say, kailangan may practice palagi. In other words, we're an institute, we are research and training, pero nung panahon ng ngayong COVID, nag-relief ang ISAK even if we are not a relief agency. Why? Because we wanted to practically respond to the needs of those that are starving around us. May dapat na ganun may praxis orientation ang lahat ng mga faith-based organization, ang lahat ng mga churches. So that we understand.
If I may add something, yung nagsabi kanina na Jesus Christ was not a revolutionary. I think On the contrary, he confronted the authorities of the days, the Pharisees, and he confronted the Roman Empire by saying, your emperor is not God, I am God. That's why he ended up crucified on the cross, which was a very political punishment during the time. And he was always in the streets preaching with the poor, caring and curing them, always talking to the poor. And the message is the solution is not violence, but love and sharing. And only the middle class can do that. The very, very rich, hindi na nila yung kaya. They don't have the heart for it anymore. And the poor, they're too poor na. Gutom na, pagod na, namamatay na. So we are in a better position to do this. And to me, practical lang ako for the time being, why can we do something about election? Why can we not move as one? Huwag nang masyadong maraming kandidato. Let's just agree on one political alternative to Marcos or Sara or whoever. Di ba? That we can rally around and really bring in men and women who have programs na talagang makakatugon sa kahirapan and all that. While campaigning, we educate the people about what programs and what issues, things like that. I'm very practical. I'm not advocating armed revolution. It's just your vote.
Oo.
Diba? And if they mess up with the electoral process, something like 86 would happen again. What will happen again? We will go to the streets because we're so mad.
Yeah.
The electoral process is so messy.
Alam
yan.
niyo actually, naintindihan ko si Fe kung bakit she insists on elections. Alam ko maraming mga ayaw na ng eleksyon kasi wala namang mangyayari dyan. But I think it is the only way popular tool that we have as of the moment that we can use.
Yeah.
Sa totoo lang.
Sa totoo lang.
Yung people power, ephemeral yan eh. Sandali lang yan, transient yan. And ang problema natin, yung people power, we have not been able to institutionalize. Yung voting power natin, andiyan na. Institutionalized yan. It's a constitutional right. Now, ang kailangan na lang, bigyan natin ng meaningful, no? Na puwersa.
Right.
And ang voters education is good. Kaya lang, sa totoo lang, marami nagsasabi sa akin, Ate Melbs, kahit naman mag-educate ka na ma-educate, pagkatapos yung mga kandidato naman, wala kang mapili.
No? Ng magaling.
Kaya nga ngayon, for your information, meron na ngayong growing na movement na ecumenical, may mga evangelical, which is us, may mga National Council of Churches, at saka mga Katoliko. Yung People's Choice Movement, ang kanilang agenda is really to vet candidates. Kasi pwede kang popular, yung mag-educate ka na, kagaya ng ISAK, 25 years siya na gumagawa ng governance education, o kaya voters education. Ang feeling ko, suntok sa buwan kasi hindi mo alam yung resulta. Pagdating ng eleksyon, ganun pa rin. Walang change sa voting behavior.
Gagawin mo yung
samantalang, oo, kung
organisado yan.
Kung organisado yan, siya sabi ni Fe, in other words, tayo yung magbivet ng mga candidates, from the barangay captain until presidente, tayo yung
and we just educate them as to the qualities of the program. We lead them as to whom they will vote for. We will not carry candidates para hindi tayo makitang partisan.
PCM yun, bahala sila doon.
Bahala silang bumoto. We give them the freedom. God gave them free will, let them choose. But we educated them about what it takes to be a good leader, what programs are going to be needed, yung mga ganyan. That's it. And then let's see. And then bantayan natin ang Comelec, bantayan natin yung mga presinto, yung mga ganyan, di ba? Let's be active. Hindi. Pinapabayaan natin yan, and that's where we get the oligarchy na palit-palit lang sila because they control the whole system. Wala tayong pakialam. You know, I don't know. It's just a gut feel. It's just a gut feel that I think we should put our energy into. The middle class man lang.
Yeah, so siguro, as practical...
Opo, kailangan natin mag-wrap up. Parang hindi tayo matatapos, ano? Marie.
As ano lang, parting remarks. Siguro importante yung we need to sabi nga ni Jesus, what do you have, no? We have our voting rights. Yun ang meron tayo ngayon. Nasa kamay natin, kay rich ka, kay poor. It's the only time na ang rich and poor, pareho, isang boto lang. No? Now, how to make it work. Sa tingin ko, dapat yung mga middle class mag-organize how to make that vote work. Yun ang ating agenda. And I think ito yung sinasabi ng Lord na you have to think about new wineskins. Wag yung mga old ways of doing things, no? Think about new wineskins on how to make voting behavior work. Tapos pangalawa, siguro yung magkaroon tayo ng sense then as middle class people that the choices we make are important. Merong powerlessness ngayon lalo yung mga ka-generation ko na parang, Ate Merbs, anong gagawin natin ngayon? Well, I think, no? Importante na tayo mismo as middle class people with certain expertise, certain experiences, mag-organize. Yung sinasabi ni Fe. Alam niyo si Fe, mahusay sa ganyan mag-organize in such a way na meron tayong voting power. May voting power tayo. Kasi ngayon, walang Catholic vote, walang Protestant vote, walang evangelical vote, no? Now, I don't think we should become a lobbyist kagaya ng INC. I'm not advocating that. But I am saying we must educate and organize enough in such a way that yung presence ng mga faith-based communities, yung influence nila is felt.
Nako, na-excite ako dyan sa election na yan dahil daming issues na pwedeng pag-usapan para tumama ang boto at lumitaw yung mga candidates na kaya nilang dalhin yung mga programang kailangan ng tao. Yun lang. That in itself is a very revolutionary act for me. Why? Because you can unseat dynasties. You can really change. Pabalikin pa ba natin ang Marcos? Di ba? Yung mga ganyan, magandang issue yan. Ang Duterte, stay pa rin ba yan? Magandang issue yan. And how do you do that? To educate them about what programs they implemented, what they did to the economy, yung mga ganyan. Then we keep educating the people. And then we get our own candidates kung meron. Di ba? Parang alternative. And then people rally around it at talagang real democratic process and election. Ayun nga lang, kung magkaka-election, di ba?
Ayun ang mga, at yun ang mga leader ng mga simbahan.
Yeah.
Mga leader ng simbahan dapat. Kagaya ni Jan, Jan Soriano.
Kasi nakakapagduda kung mag-election pa
Kayong mga pastor, trabaho ninyo is to teach the whole counsel of God in such a way that people have a sense na ang mission natin sa mundo, no, is holistic. Yan ang wala Mali yung theology kasi. So, yan ang trabaho ng mga pastor natin. Na magkaroon ng integral mission, yung kanilang kongregasyon, so that they see that Jesus is Lord, not just over the church. But Jesus' Lordship has to be felt in the arena of politics, of the academy, of media and the arts, etc. Yan ang dapat nakaturuan na sana yung mga pastor natin, kinakalat nila.
Sabi ni Tim, mukhang sa sobrang hot nito, maraming episodes dapat sa topic na ito pa lang. Surely we will have a lot more in the weeks to come. Marie, let's wrap up. Let's integrate.
Especially about elections, no? I think I would have to agree very much with Ate Melba on what is in our hands, and that's our power to vote. At alam mo, maganda lang tong comment na to ng isa sa viewers natin. Sabi niya, the middle-class Christians are attending churches which do not even want to do voters' education because they think that it is not the church's responsibility to do so. So magandang hamon yung sinabi ni Ate Fe kanina, no? Revolution is not with violence. Baka ang kailangang mag-revolution muna yung ating pagbasa ng Biblia at yung ating mga ministry. Sabi ni Ate Letty, besides the speech, sabi niya, for the poor and children, pag may calamity, yun lang ang ginagawa. So how about really integrating the need of the society with how the Bible will respond to that? Di ba, Kuya Jail? At sa mga viewers namin na talagang, alam niyo po, isa ito sa pinakamaraming reaction and engagement with you all. Na magpapanic button na ako sa mga reaction ninyo kung paano namin ipapasok. Kaya gusto ko magpasalamat sa inyo, and maybe we will leave that to you, no? Yung question na yan na pag-isipan natin dito sa ISIP-ISAK, ituloy natin sa susunod na linggo itong discussion na ito, itong ganitong mga isip, kung paano ba tayo mag-organisa. Paano tayo mag-organisa bilang mga Kristiyanong bumoboto, na meron tayong isip, tama yung ating isip, at nakabase tayo sa Biblia. Kuya Jail, any parting words for our viewers?
Ako, gusto ko pong i-echo, brothers and sisters, yung isang common theme doon sa chat natin, yung parang alinlangan or yung parang pagtatanong kung may kakayahan ba talaga ang middle class. Obviously, sila Ate Melba, sila Ate Fe, talagang hinihikayat nila tayo na magising, no, doon sa potential natin. Whether it's strong or good enough or significant, that's another question. Pero narinig natin ang sinasabi ni na Ate Fe at ni Ate Melba, and those are wonderful insights. Naiintindihan ko rin ako kasi isa akong sociologist at ang aking disiplina ay nakaangkla sa class analysis. Naiintindihan ko rin yung mga tanong na sinasabi ng ating mga participants, no, mga kapatid, Marie. In fact, yung hesitation na kaya ba talaga ng middle class? Kung tayo nga mga Christian churches na middle class, hindi natin tinuturo ito ano yung ituturo natin sa ibang mga tao? And I think in a way, parang merong insight si Ate Fe at saka si Ate Melba na maybe the transformation should work and should begin within this within our circles, our middle class circles, sa kasaysayan ng social change, no, around the world. Yung middle class may potential siya for political transformation, pero meron din siyang potential para i-galvanize lalo yung mga right wing or yung mga conservative interests. And I feel na gaya na sinabi ni na Ate Melba at ni na Ate Fe kanina, baka this is an opportunity for us to really reflect ano yung sinasabi ng Diyos sa gitna ng ating napaka-unequal na society. At nasabi kanina ni Ate Fe, siding with God. Sabi niyo rin po, mga brothers and sisters, siding with God. A lot more comments are here. We're showing up, but maybe we'll bring them up next week pagkasama na natin si Kuya Willie Villarama. Ate Fe, Ate Melba, super nice ang conversation natin sa gabi ito. Parang hindi tayo natatapos. Ano? All right. Maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. And we really appreciate. At Marie.
Kuya Jail. So muli, paalala sa aming mga viewers, don't forget to like our page. Yes, and view us next week. See you. Salamat po.
See you. Thanks.